Great to be with you this morning. It's a Friday. We usually do this show on Mondays, but we had to push it back a little bit this week. So appreciate you coming joining us. I mean, we've had hundreds of people watching the show live, which has been super exciting. And we've been at this for 10 weeks, doing kind of daily or even weekly interviews with church leaders from all over the world, just talking about doing church during a pandemic, talking about doing church during protests and an election cycle in the US and all the things that are going on, and just trying to talk to real pastors, real church leaders that are, boots on the ground, serving people, loving their community, and kind of what it's been like for them. So really excited about today's show. I am joined by Darren Overstreet, and I want to pop Darren in here. Hey, Darren, how you doing?
Good, Frank. How are you? Good morning.
I'm doing well. Yes, still morning for us out on the West Coast.
That's right. 9 a.m. here.
9 a.m. Pacific time. That's when we do the show. Darren, it's great to have you. You are, the senior pastor or lead evangelist for the Seattle Church of Christ.
Yep.
3 campuses, serving 600 or so people out there in the community. And we kind of teed this show up as, Chop Zone and church, and how the church is going to change going forward, based on our conversation, right? About how, and there's all this crazy stuff going on. And you're leading the church kind of right there in an area that's got some stuff that's definitely been in the news, right? The Chop Zone has been heavily in the news. I think it's all gone now, and it kind of got taken care of. But still, it's, we've been doing church remotely for the past, I've kind of lost track, but for months now.
16 weeks, man.
Yes, there you go. You're like counting. You're like 16. Yeah. I go 17.
Almost 17. Yep.
Yeah. So anyways, it's great to have you. I'd love for you to kind of introduce yourself, tell the people who you are, how you got into leading a church and ministry and all those kinds of things.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. My name is Darren Overstreet. I live in Seattle, in a suburb just outside of Seattle. And I didn't intend to go in the ministry, and often that's the case. God calls you out of some other vocation. But I went to the University of Washington a long time ago, and I was studying architecture. Had a dream of being an architect, and I got my degree. And when I was on campus, I became a Christian and joined a church and made Jesus my Lord. And then after a few years, God started putting it in my heart and other people's hearts to go in the ministry. So we entered the ministry in 1995 in Seattle, went to the church in Tacoma, Washington. And then we've been up here in Seattle for 10 years. And we have 600 people here, 3 different satellite locations. If you've ever been to Seattle, I think you have, right?
Yeah, I've been there before. It's a lot of time, but I've been there.
Yeah. It's really hard to get around. It's really dense. There's almost 40 million people in a pretty small area. So we've got a pretty spread out group. So we have 3 different locations that all stay really connected, but worship separately on Sundays. So it's a wonderful place. Tricky place to do ministry. You got to have your thinking cap on. You got to be creative. Think a lot outside the box, but we love it here. So we've been leading this church for about almost 4 years, but we've been in Seattle here on staff for 10. So
yeah, wow. What makes Seattle a tricky place to lead a church, to be a Christian, to love your community, all those kind of things? Like why is that?
Well, not long ago, someone wrote a book. I think a series of books. I think the last name is Killeen. They're professors at Pacific Lutheran University, which is down in Tacoma. I got my hands on this book. It's called Religion and Public Life in the Pacific Northwest. And what they did was they split the United States up into different regions to figure out how do they approach spirituality? How do they approach Christianity? And they use the census. So the census informs at least who is in this area. And what I found put words to what I was feeling at the time, which was, man, I got friends in Dallas, Texas. I got friends in Oklahoma. I got friends in the Midwest, East Coast, Southeast, everywhere. And it sure seems like it's easier to get people to go to church down there than it is here.
Yeah.
Yes, 10 people on the street to go to the church, and 9 say immediately, yeah, not interested. And then the 1 might be interested, but even that's kind of an adventure. So I hope I'm not exaggerating that. But anyway, they wrote a book. And what I found out was Seattle or the Pacific Northwest, so Washington and Oregon and Idaho, have the highest population of nuns in the country. And I'm not talking about people that live in a convent. I'm talking about nuns in terms of on the census, when they say, do you associate as a Christian? They might say yes, but then they say, do you have an institution that you belong to? And they say none. So nun zone is huge here.
Wow.
Yeah. And so this book explained in great detail that if you've been to Seattle, to get over the Rockies, to get over the Cascades, to get here, way back when, you had to be a rugged individualist.
Mm-hmm.
You had to absolutely be stubbornly individualistic.
Right.
Because, otherwise you stopped in Denver. On your way west, you said, you know what, I'm too tired. I'm not going
I stopped in San Diego. I just
said, you found the water and surfing, and sometimes I wish I'd have done that. But on the Oregon Trail, man, some people said I've had enough and they stopped. But the ones that made it to Seattle generally have a spirit that is individualistic, mm-hmm. entrepreneurial. On the other hand, what I've also found, and what our staff has found, that is it's highly spiritual. But spiritual doesn't mean religious.
Right.
Spiritual means they have a deep, burning desire in their heart to make something meaningful out of their life.
Yeah.
So what we find here is, honestly, Frank, it's I'm not being funny or trying to make a joke, but people here can be super spiritual about salmon and about the environment, mm-hmm. recycling, about all kinds of things. Honestly, they can be more grassroots in their heart about it than most people are about their faith.
Right.
The trick is to get them to understand that purpose in their heart really comes from an everlasting God who put it at the beginning, and get them to see a connection to God and Jesus and what he wants for their life. So all that to say, the traditional way of approaching getting someone to church and bringing them to faith has to be rethought a lot. Flexible. So that's what I mean by being a tricky place. It's a fascinating place, but not one where most people just naturally want to come to church.
Yeah. Yeah, man, really, really interesting. So what's it been like? You got that mixed in, and then, COVID-19 hits, lockdowns hit, we're forced online. We're 16 weeks in, going on 17. What's that been like for you? How have you guys handled it as a church?
Probably a lot like everyone else. We're in the habit of meeting together every Sunday. We have some small groups. We have a midweek service occasionally. So what we did was we just adapted. We used technology, which is a big deal in Seattle.
Yeah.
We've been evolving every week. I mean, we've been trying different things. We've been, but we've tried to stay connected through technology. And I think what I've tried to do, which I know a lot of pastors are doing, is not just do church in isolation, but as you do church in isolation, start to pay attention to maybe what you're learning and what people are learning about their faith. So what I've learned that Satan is hard at work. We're not meant to be. We're not created to be in isolation. We were created for community.
Right.
We were created for relationship. We thrive in community, not in isolation. So I think Satan's doing great work to actually dull people's hearts and to pull them away from fellowship enough to try and harden their hearts. On the other hand, I've actually seen as I've led meetings online with my leaders, I've seen some tremendous growth in just the way they think about their faith and the way they think about their community. And so I'm trying to, someone once told me in a class I took that we're not just pastors, we're ethnographers. And ethnography is the study of people and how they develop cultures.
Okay. So, I was like, that's the word I need to look up because I don't know.
Right. So honestly, if you're not an ethnographer as a pastor, you're missing the boat, because you've got cultural values and norms in your church. You've got them in your city. They make their way into the church. So what I'm trying to do is just keep an eye on people, keep an eye on our dynamic, keep an eye on how people are doing, and figure out, what is the Spirit trying to tell us during this time that about our culture, maybe what it can get better at, maybe what we need to lose, maybe what we want more of, that kind of thing. So that's what I'm trying to do as a lead pastor is it's more of a 30,000 foot view than kind of a nearsighted view. You got to do both, but I got to step above it sometimes and say, what is really happening here? And it's been fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, I'm not a pastor. I've talked to enough of them, and I've been a Christian for a number of years now. I mean, the church is meant to be together. People are meant to be together, and like in this environment, most pastors are like, man, this is just terrible. Like, I can't be with the people, and that's what I do, and so it's a challenging thing, from an outside kind of perspective. One of the things I've heard, like, two sides, and I'm sure there's many more, but kind of two polarizing things. Like, I've heard a number of times, like, I can't wait to go back to church. Like, I'm ready, essentially saying I can't wait for this to be back to normal, how it was pre-COVID.
Right.
And then I've heard, church is going to look different after this. Yeah. And I lean towards the church is going to look different side, because I feel like this is a moment where God is teaching us a lot of things. I'd love to hear your perspective on, like, how you're thinking about it. What do you feel like you might be learning in this moment that is different as we come out of this in whatever year it ends up being?
I know, right?
Yeah.
That's a great question. So I was on a call last week in our sort of our group, our denomination. I was on a call with ministers from all over the North America. We try to get on once a week, but it's mostly like, maybe it's once every other week, but we're talking about everything. And someone asked the question, hey man, what are you guys learning? What are you seeing? And it was so interesting hearing the variety of answers.
Yeah.
And all of them probably have some truth. None of them are true in and of themselves. But here were some of the answers. So one guy was like, man, Satan is winning here. I cannot wait to get back to normal.
Yeah.
Another person was like, well, I don't know. I mean, Satan's doing some work, but I don't know. I kind of feel like this may be a great opportunity to learn some stuff. Maybe it's God doing this. No, it ain't God, man. This is Satan. We're supposed to be together. So it's so interesting. There's everything in between.
Right.
But honestly, I really think the Holy Spirit does not follow our scripted plans.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, if we could just learn that. We can have plans, but they're just as good as the paper they're written on. The Holy Spirit's he's way out ahead of us doing his work in the world. Yeah. And we can either figure out what is happening, or we can try to script it. And what I did after that, I got on with my leaders and I said, hey, I just asked them the same question. I said, hey, when we come out of COVID, when we come out of isolation, I got one question for you. And I wrote it down. It says, when things get back to normal, right, in quotes there, because who knows, do we really know what normal is? I mean, if someone says, yes, this is normal, then right on. I mean,
they're normal.
What do you want the church to have learned, or what do you want to be better at? And I asked my leaders this, because you got to start with your leaders. So here's what they said. I wrote them down. One person said, a deeper appreciation for being together. Honestly, I was in patterns that I took for granted.
Yeah.
I was wishing we didn't have to meet together so often. So another person said, hey, I really appreciate embracing, I want to embrace a more simple way of doing worship. We have so much pomp and circumstances on Sundays, so much things we have to set up. Do we need that? They're having some of the most authentic worship in their living room with their family than they were at church on Sunday. That convicts me as a pastor.
Yeah.
Another person said, hey, maybe a more simple approach to relationship. One guy did say that I'm getting weird in isolation. I need people.
Right.
That in and of itself is teaching me some stuff.
Yeah.
Now in Seattle, Frank, here's the biggest thing for me. When this lady in our church talks, everyone stops and listens. She's just got a really deep spiritual life. But basically she said, look, we're traveling less. I feel like in our church, we travel all the time. And Seattle is a very expensive place to live. Man, I've been to San Diego. My dad used to live there. It's easily like that. It's probably even getting more expensive.
Yeah.
But this person said, hey, we're traveling all over the place. And we're in such a rush to get to all the church functions that I'm kind of flying by my community. I'm flying by my neighbors and community to get to where we're all meeting.
Yeah.
Now I'm forced to stay in my community and by my neighbors. And the amazing thing is I've gotten to know more of them than I ever did before. And
maybe I got time here now.
I mean, dude, I live in a condo complex in Seattle. We sit in our backyard now way more than we ever have.
Yeah.
And we're talking to neighbors over the fence that honestly we waved at sometimes. And it's super convicting. So there's something that the Spirit is even teaching us in terms of, gosh, are we really ministering to our community or are we just doing church? If we left the city of Seattle, would our communities notice we're gone?
Right.
And I'm just like, I wrote these things down and I told my staff last week, we've got to think through these things. Let's not be too quick to say Satan is having his way in COVID, but let's not be too, I don't like it. I want to see people face to face. I haven't seen that many eyeballs lately. So, but at the same time, I'll tell you, man, if we miss the opportunity, if we're just in a rush to get back to normal and fly back to meeting together, we may miss the opportunity to learn something deep, and we may not be in tune with our people who are learning their own lessons. We probably just need to ask them.
Have you guys,
see what they say?
Are you thinking, did this spark another level of, man, now let's, like, we've talked with the leaders and got some really good thinking. Are we gonna survey the church, right? You're gonna send something out to ask them to answer some questions, do some feedback on. I think everyone's surveying, like, are you comfortable coming back, right? I think that's a common, let's just do that. But
yeah,
what you described is a bit more than that, right? It's a variety of things, all kind of related to coming back, but just related to doing things different. Are you going to ask people?
All the time, bro. If we don't ask people and listen, which takes a little more time, then we won't know. So I'm not going to assume anything. I'm a leader, so I've got to lead. But I want to ask. I think I mentioned the word ethnographer.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's just an observer. What is happening? I start with my leaders and ask them. So what do you guys think? What do you see? My leaders are another 40 set of eyes. Mm-hmm. So what does the church right now look like through your eyes? And then we go to the people and we ask a lot and then make decisions, but we don't make decisions assuming we know what they might say if we ask. So right. Yeah, we're going to survey. And we're going to maybe, I don't want to overstate this, but we're going to maybe define a new normal. I don't know what that's going to look like. I think if I even said that would be presumptuous, but I sure am curious at what people think a new normal is. Because honestly, Frank, I'm not just trying to have church on Sunday. I'm trying to build a church that effectively reaches my community. And if there's something that we need to change, then I'm going to let them maybe sound off on what that might be. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you guys, it's just from conversation, aren't back to meeting in person in any real format today. Um, and,
No.
and are you doing anything like what? Let's talk small groups a little bit. I know that's something we touched on, previously when we were chatting. But are people doing small groups? Have you noticed anything new there? Are you learning anything about that impacting the community? What do you think the future of small groups looks like?
Well, I certainly hope it's not Zoom, man, because my people are kind of zoomed out.
It's real. Tech burnout, Zoom burnout is real. I'm in that category of this all day. So
oh my goodness.
Zoom is like, I can't handle it.
Yeah, we're starting to see some online fatigue, actually.
Yeah.
A lot of our people work in the tech industry, so they're staring at a screen all day and they're like, oh my goodness, I got to get on a. So the small groups aren't that vibrant right now.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what I think is that once we emerge from this, what I'm anticipating is a greater conviction about small groups.
Yeah.
Actually, more of a conviction about small groups than maybe church on Sunday. And honestly, dude, I believe the church grows through small groups. Yep. It does not grow on Sunday or through Sunday. It's a vital piece of community, but the vibrant piece is small groups. And so I think what I'm going to see is people are going to want to meet together more in small groups, and they're going to take the simple qualities they've learned during COVID and maybe have some talks about what changes they might want to make in the character of their small group to make them more community friendly. So
I love.
We're not meeting yet, but we will. We haven't even opened up yet. We're in phase 2, and we can meet together, but we've decided we can meet 100 or less.
Okay.
But we are taking it real slow because we don't want to open up too soon. So we haven't started meeting back together yet.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it earlier. I mean, I think, or one of your leaders, it was one of your kind of comments. It's like the heart grows fonder when you're away, right? When you go on travel and you're not right. Or those kind of situations when you come home, it's like you love, seeing everyone. There's this like renew, like the church has been 3-4 months, it's been 5, 6, 8 months. And we've even in small formats, had some of our small group over to do a barbecue, and we're social distancing and we're all just in the backyard and all those things. And it's like, even that feels so good. You're like, this is awesome. I cannot wait to like make this more regular and, be able to actually give you a hug and, kind of, but like even that moment, right? Like, this is good. Like, this is awesome. So I do think, I love your comment about small groups might even get reinvigorated in a lot of ways because people get to come together and they haven't been. So, everyone's just dying for that experience.
Yep. Yeah.
What about staffing? So as you're thinking through all this stuff, I've seen some churches start to go, and mostly related to doing church online and keeping that momentum going. Because a lot of churches learned a ton about doing sort of digital church and church online. Yeah. And I've seen some churches start to think about like staffing changes in order to continue having a real church online experience and almost treating it like another campus or another location, having, a leadership team over it, those kind of things. But I think about for us, in our church here in San Diego, we have 5 locations, and we're just like you guys. We meet independently on Sunday, and it's a full service preaching, all the things. So doing that and having an online experience with the staff we have is almost impossible. Right now, who knows what's going to happen? But I just look at it, and you're like, it's a lot of volunteers and all the AV and how do you put on a great online experience and do it in person? So anyways, I just wonder if you have any thoughts around staffing and volunteer needs and those kind of things moving into the future.
Wow, that's a good question. So the question is, am I rethinking staffing after all of this or through all of this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, for sure. Now, one of the beautiful things, Frank, and I, quite frankly, I'd have to be honest and say I worried about this a little bit when we started this isolation thing.
Yeah.
I've seen people rise up because of what we've needed from people. I mean, I've got a staff of 16 people here, and like 5 of us are really savvy at tech and all that kind of stuff. And so if we've got a staff of 16 people, each Sunday is put together by a staff of maybe 50. And that includes a lot of volunteers. So we've seen people step up in a really powerful way. There's a woman in my ministry, my local ministry here, who has stepped up in a way that I've not seen her in a long time. It's invigorated her. So it's even more gifts are emerging if you're paying attention to that. But I do think one of the things I gotta think through is as we move into the future, what maybe do I have to put? What resources do I have to put into an online presence in terms of equipment, people that know how to do it? Because I will say this: if pastors are thinking, at least in my opinion, that everyone's just screaming to get back to church and do everything we did it the way we did it before COVID, they might be surprised. There will be some people going, no, for instance, I've gotten this, hey, Darren, man, these Zoom small group leader meetings we're doing, they're really convenient because I get off work at 6:30 and have dinner and plug it at 7:30. Can we keep doing that? And my first response is, wait a second. Whoa, we got to be together. And then I thought, oh, come on, we may have to rethink having more meetings online.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
like there's some where, the other thing, I love that. Like I love, maybe small group leaders meetings, small group training can happen online half the time or 75% of the time. And it's, whatever, once a quarter in person or something like that. I think that's interesting to think about. The other one I think is interesting is when people go back, if we keep having a great online experience, will people show up in person on Sunday every Sunday? And how will think about how you feel about that? If some people are like, look, I've got a family of 5, I've got 3 8-year-old boys, I love being at church, but honestly, doing it online at home once in a while and like having breakfast and doing church in front of the TV like might be appealing once in a while.
Yeah.
And how
have you heard that in San Diego? I mean, I know you have 3 boys. You probably I don't know what life is like for you in the morning, but
crazy.
Well, that's happening. That will happen. I just think I just think we need to be really flexible and open. If someone obviously said, "Hey, by the way, I love this, and I'll see you guys online every Sunday," that there's some discipleship to talk about there. Church community is not about my needs only. Church community only works when people are yielding to the needs of others, and being together.
Love that.
Is needed, man. So I would be concerned about that person. Now, if someone says what you just said, which is like, look, is it okay if every now and then we have we watch it online and have our family worship together?
Right.
But I don't want to make that the norm. Maybe it's the exception, because here's the thing. Families are worshiping now in their living room more than they ever did before, and I think that's a good thing. So one thing I wanted to get to, though, is someone asked, I'm just looking at this little chat line here. Someone asked about giving. I just wanted to say something about that.
Oh, please do. That was the last question. So let's
jump. So look, man, every pastor, they're lying if they don't say the first thing they thought of when COVID hit was, oh no, my money, my offering. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
If someone says that wasn't, I mean, maybe there's a guy out there, but it was. And honestly, we cut our expenses, we cut back on all kinds of things, but I really appreciate Tidely. I appreciate our app. We have the church app you guys provide.
Yeah.
Our giving has gone up. So honestly, I don't know exact numbers as of today, but it's gone up a few $1,000s a week.
Wow.
Over our budget. So
incredible.
Two things. It's Tidely, plus it's just we wrote a study series, an 8-week study series at the beginning of the year on giving. And there's a really good podcast on the Bible Project by these two young millennials that went to Harvard and they wrote a paper on God and money. In fact, there's a book they wrote called God and Money. And honestly, we have so many millennials in this church who don't even know, bro. They see Tidely. Some of them don't even know what tithe means. We assume people do. So
Bible, it's way too
low. No, and it's they can't. They're like, what, Tidely, or a tithe. So we wrote a series. We took people through it. I got some pushback. Like, are we seriously talking about money?
Because you did it for 8 weeks. It was an 8-week series. Like that's
well, no, not in church. We did it for 3 weeks or 4 weeks, but we gave it to our small groups and they did it in 8 weeks. But all that to say, we had to courageously step into the space of talking to people about giving as being an act of worship. Mm-hmm. We have to start to educate the younger generation. I'm telling you, bro. As we get farther away from my generation, people don't have a traditional idea of tithing,
right?
Especially in a city like Seattle, where a lot of people are coming in unchurched. Yeah. So we had to do it.
Like to give.
And I think it's one of the factors that really made our giving go up.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just a comment on that. I also think a dynamic that's changed significantly just over the years is people like to support a lot of different things. Like
that's right.
10 years ago, 20, 50 years ago, there was a handful of big charities that people might give to. But, today there's countless, charities, local charities, international charities, people doing work in your neighborhood, like that people like to be a part of, those kind of things and support those things, which is amazing. But I do think it also affects you're giving to your local church and what that looks like. And you got to consider all the things. And I think it's really cool that you guys did an 8-week series. I mean, I'm going to check out the book, and I love the Bible Project. So I haven't seen that particular video, but
it's a podcast. It's really great. And, you bring up a good point, because the nuns in Seattle, the nun zone people, when someone's really has an organic, they're advocates at heart. They're grassroots people. They are going to spend their money on what they believe in. And so more than even when I became a Christian, way more, people are giving to causes well outside the church. And if you try to tell them not to, good luck with that. Yeah. Because it's just not a battle I want to fight. On the other hand, if you teach them rightly to honor God first, these two guys in this podcast talk about when they really got convicted about, and these are young guys, these are in their 30s, millennials. When they really got convicted about their money, they started giving 30, 40, 50% of their income. Wow. We're not talking 10%.
Right. Yeah, those are big jumps. It's not from 10 to 12.
No, if you just courageously talk about it and in a 2020 nuanced way, but biblical, you'd be surprised. People are generous at heart. So,
and you had mentioned you jumped into that series, but not related to COVID or anything. But before that series, you were seeing some, giving, I don't know, weakness, or like you were seeing some dips. And so, I mean, can you walk us through that and kind of how you got into the series, and then what you saw maybe after the series? It sounds like today things are going great. But
and it could change. We wrote a series mostly because we were seeing that it was dipping, and we could tell as a staff, the eldership and the board, we could tell that we were probably undergiving as a church.
Mm-hmm.
And then as I started to talk about to people, and I'll tell you, I mean, it's embarrassing in one sense, but as I was talking to a lot of young people new to our church, some of them were saying, yeah, I don't really give to the church, but I will when I can. I talked to one guy that said, hey, I give my time to the church, and that's all I can do right now. So we really realized, wow, we have got to get updated on our teaching on this.
Mm.
So we called people in a really careful way to radical discipleship in their finances. And it's kind of a scary thing to do, man, as a pastor. But
totally.
But if we shy away from it, we're robbing them of the joy of generosity.
Yeah.
And that's not fair either. So we just started talking about it more. We always start with our leaders and kind of move our way down into the membership. And it could change.
Yeah.
But this is a very wealthy area. And we've just called people. One of the things we did was we started with 3 weeks on the generosity of God.
Yeah.
And when you get done looking at how God has been generous to us in every way, it's almost impossible to not give back generously.
Yeah.
And so that's just a few things, but we're going to always keep an eye on it. But so far, it's really bearing some fruit.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. It's amazing I do. I mean, we hear it, we kind of see it. Not everyone will say it, but you kind of see it with churches. Like, talking about giving is maybe the hardest thing for many, many pastors, because they didn't go to school or they didn't get training. It wasn't about giving. It was about taking care of people and leading a church. But it wasn't about the finance side of, you need money to grow a church. And, like, that's just part of the picture. But, teaching people's hearts, and when you see what God's done for you, it's pretty easy to respond in a genuine way. So love that. Man, this has been great. I think we should call it now, just for time's sake.
Yeah.
But super appreciate your time. Where can folks go to check you guys out and watch you guys online?
SeattleChurchofChrist.org. If you go there, there's even the study series I just talked about is on there. But
that's amazing. Is it recorded? Like, is it on YouTube or a podcast?
Well, there's some podcasts, but there's the print series. It's in print.
Okay, cool.
That, and then if you go to I think it's sermons, or each region has a Facebook. I'm not sorry, a YouTube link to all the sermons and things like that. So that's SeattleChurchofChrist.org. And yeah, man. So you can find a link to all three of our. You see that there? You can find a link to all three of the regions there.
Yep. I right there. I just popped it up on the screen for everyone. Super tech savvy over here.
Right? That just happened.
That's awesome.
How do you stay so quiet in your house? I thought I'd see boys running through, just like bouncing off the walls.
This is a rare show. If you were to go watch past episodes, there's probably an 80% likelihood that you will see kids running behind me, and they have lizards right over here. So they come in, and they will grab their lizards. They're in this room. And then, I mean, one of the shows a couple weeks ago, like, one of them, while I was doing the show, had one of them bite my hand. He's standing over here off camera, and my hand's like on the chair, and he puts this thing right on my thumb, and it like latches onto me. So anyways, they're sneaky little guys.
Well, you must, and you have a good wife back there supporting you. And
amazing wife. I will say, hardest thing for probably most families is homeschooling during the coronavirus. So yes, she is incredible. Very grateful for the wife. But Darren, great to have you. Super appreciate the time. Thanks, guys. Anybody that's watching and anybody that's going to watch it recorded, hopefully you enjoy this stuff. There's always something good to take away. And we will be back on Monday, 9 a.m. Pacific, with our next interview. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.